Travel and Things in association with Sun Destinations, iconic destinations with amazing experiences, present In Conversation With. I am your host, David Batsoffen, and today I am joined by a forensic pathologist, Hestelle van Staden. Dr. van Staden, good morning. Welcome to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, David.
May I call you Hestelle?
Yes, you're more than welcome. Please do.
Thanks so much. Blood Has a Voice. Brand new book from you, not for sensitive viewers, published by Tafelberg. What sort of, I don't want to say what sort of publishers go, yeah, we'll publish this. It's all about dead people, not I can see dead people. I can write about dead people in your instance.
I think it's quite brave publishers that actually goes into that. It's not your run-of-the-mill kind of conversation or your run-of-the-mill kind of book.
Yeah.
But I do think there's quite a lot of interest in forensic pathology and in people doing forensic pathology, because I always say to people, I tend to not say what I do when I just meet people. I'll rather tell them I'm a doctor if I have to say something. Because it's either a showstopper or a show starter. So,
I was about to ask you that very question. You're standing in a social setting. People go, what do you do? What do you do? And then they get to you and you go, oh, I cut up dead people for a living. And then I should imagine there's a deathly silence for a moment.
Absolutely. No pun intended, I'm sure. Yes, no, completely. So I rather say I'm a doctor, and usually they go like, a GP, or what specialty do you do? So, people are actually very inquisitive. I try rather focusing on what you like, what don't you like, when I just meet people, not on what's your occupation, because I think that only makes a small part of who we are.
Yeah.
But people tend to ask. But I must add on there, you said something about not for sensitive viewers. I don't really I think that was the safest thing to do. But it isn't really a gutsy, gory kind of.
Not at all. Even the images that you've used in the book.
Yeah.
But I think if people, I think we're mollycoddling our public far too much. If they see a book, and I do have a copy, and it says Blood Has a Voice, stories from the autopsy table, it doesn't need the not for sensitive readers, because they know what's inside. So if they choose either to buy it or to open the book in the bookstore, they must expect to see people on an autopsy table, or parts of people on an autopsy table.
Absolutely. I'm very sensitive to the fact that I never want to. There's obviously people that like shock value.
Yeah.
But I think that's very cheap. And that makes the lives that we're dealing with and the deaths that we're dealing with very cheap. So I've got a major problem with that. I'm the one that always takes out pictures from my presentations. To shock somebody is easy. I can easily do that. I can take you into mortuary on any given day and shock you beyond measure. But I think that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to show something or tell a story.
Yeah.
So the not for sensitive viewers or readers is probably more related to the fact that, yes, we are dealing with a sensitive topic, and with that it needs to be handled with sensitivity rather than not for sensitive readers.
If I could take you back to matric, what would, and I'm assuming you were 18 at the time, what would 18-year-old Hestelle, what did 18-year-old Hestelle want to be? Was this your career choice back then? Did you know what you wanted to be even at that young age?
14-year-old Hestelle knew she wanted to be a forensic pathologist.
Oh.
I tell the story. Yeah, I actually tell the story in my book that I was a youngster. I was around, my mother says I was around 5 years old when I told her I wanted to write a book and I want to be a doctor. But I never thought the two would kind of like have something to do with one another. I used to, when I went to school, I used to write these very funny, not funny as in ha-ha funny, but kind of like very flights of fancy kind of stories, little stories. And I always said I wanted to be a doctor, but I knew let me just go back. We had a wonderful GP as children, Dr. Connie Oosthuis, and I'll never forget her, and how caring and lovely she was. And doctors at that stage even went and did home visits.
I was about to say, our doctors back in PE used to come to us. We didn't have to go. Dr. Green was his name. He came to us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My baby sister once fell off like a highish table, and Dr. Connie actually came to our house to examine her. And I'll never forget that. But I knew I didn't want to be that kind of doctor. As much as I thought it's wonderful, that didn't pique my interest. And that also, I think in terms of my personality, I wouldn't be able to sit still behind a desk and listen to people tell me about their flu. And I think, my one sister is a GP, and she's an excellent GP.
Right.
If anybody ever needs a referral, I always send them to her.
Right.
But I wouldn't be able to do that. I definitely wouldn't be able to do that. And then I read one of Patricia Cornwall's books, where she describes her character, Kay Scarpetta. And as I read that, there was just something that grabbed me, and it's never left me. It's just, I think I'm really living my dream.
People who go, is that really a dream? But for you, it is. You must have then read Kathy Reich's books as well. Because she too is a forensic pathologist, if I remember correctly. A forensic archaeologist.
Anthropologist,
quite correct. Yeah.
She's actually written a book on anthropology that's one of our prescribed texts. So she's renowned. She's not just a fiction writer. She's actually very well qualified.
I was about to say, where was I going now? I've shot myself in the foot with the direction I was about to take. At the end of the day, I know. Let's go back to the book. How did you set out to include what you have and exclude? I mean, because if I remember correctly, you've done over 7,000 autopsies, which is a lot of autopsies. So how did you pick the ones? And we'll get to the celebrity one that's mentioned in the book in a moment or two. How did you pick those that made it into the book? And did you have to ask families for permission and that type of thing?
David, it's actually a very difficult question, as much as it should be easy to answer. I can't actually tell you. It's a question that comes up in every interview I do, and I don't think my answer is any better than the first time. I don't know.
Right.
I started with the one I think you're referring to, the celebrity one, because I thought I had a lot of information. We get very limited information. In fact, when we do the post-mortem examinations, we often just get told somebody died in the veld, or they were found in a veld. We sometimes don't even get demographic information. And so I thought I could start with that one because I had more information.
Yeah.
And then I went back and I wrote the first chapter, which is my story, and the second chapter, which is the more technical aspects regarding the law and how one does a post-mortem examination. And then I was kind of led by which stories I thought wanted to be told. When I did the initial proposal, so I was approached by NBIA, and they said, well, please write us a proposal of cases you find interesting, which I then did, but that was before I started writing.
Right.
So eventually I had written 3 chapters. I went back to that, which I proposed to them, and realized, well, I might not have enough information on this case or that case, or something popped up. And it really felt to me, these are stories that wanted to be told. And fortunately, I had a lot of input from the publishers in terms of what they thought might be interesting and what they thought might be interesting types of stories to tell.
Okay.
And I wasn't told ever to not include anything. And I didn't really decide not to include any stories. But I didn't ask for permission from the families, because in cases where the death was natural, I changed the names, and I made the families and the people unrecognizable. But in the other cases which had been completed, this public record, because these are cases that had already gone through the courts. So that makes it a matter of public record, and that's why I have certain pictures, for example, in the book, because these are already on record, so I could use them.
I know where I was going earlier with my question. That's why I was looking down, because I made a note so I don't forget again. Do you believe that TV series like CSI and those types of things have brought forensic pathology to the fore? And I know that you mentioned in the book that toe tags are not toe tags. You do ankles or you do wrists. Unlike in the TV series where there's always a big toe sticking out of under a sheet with one of those cardboard tags attached to it.
I think it did, which is, I think, a good thing, because suddenly people are much more. Oh, I also think people are more interested in everything that's going around them. And we're really living in the age of information sharing technology, information boom. I think people feel entitled to a lot of information.
Right.
And I do think series like CSI did actually do very well in terms of that. They did us a lot of disservice as well, because they present this wonderful view that you tick, 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 put something into a computer, and the next minute you have DNA results, which is absolutely ridiculous. And we try to, in my TV series, which is entitled Autopsy, like the Afrikaans book, we actually try to correct some of those misconceptions to show a truer reflection of what it really is like. But even that is very sterilized, because obviously, one can't show you walk into the mortuary and you do 4 postmortems and there's just blood running over the floor. Nobody wants to see that.
Those floors are pristine.
The reality of it.
Those floors in the TV series are pristine. You could eat off everything, including the table that you're working on.
You could absolutely, which is nothing like it is. No, I do think it piques people's interest for sure.
Hestelle, how do you, as a doctor, prepare, or if that is the correct word, for an autopsy? You get told that I don't know, somebody's been shot in the face with a shotgun, and there's going to be very little of that face left. Do you have to mentally prepare yourself when you walk in, or is it just another autopsy, just another cadaver on a table?
I don't think any autopsy for me is ever just another cadaver on a table or another autopsy. For me, there's always the connection, that there's always the reminder this is somebody's loved one. Whether they look like somebody would like that was shot in the face with a shotgun, or somebody that was run over by a train, for example. I mean, the trauma to those kind of bodies it's just shocking.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, to me, it's always a question of thinking, this is still somebody's loved one. And I tend to ask myself, what would a family feel having to go identify such a body, which is incredible trauma. But I seem to have lost you there for a minute.
No,
David.
I'm still here.
I'm
still here.
Yeah. Oh, my computer did something funny, but I'm back.
Yeah.
In any case, so what I do is, for me, it is the minute I get dressed, I know I'm in that zone, if you want to call it that, where
nice scrubs.
That exactly. They are nice. Now I'm very pleased with them. For me, it's a question of immediately getting into that zone where my focus is on what I need to do, what I need to document, what I need to make sure I collect, so that I'm not in an emotional state when I'm there.
Yeah.
And you take yourself out of the equation. You step back. And I think any doctor that, for example, does surgery does the exact same thing. You give a step backwards and you look at the facts on the table. It's no use I stand there crying my eyes out, because who's going to actually give this person justice if I'm also there not concentrating or being overcome with emotion? So that's my approach, and it's worked for me.
But then if you walk in to a situation and it's a small child, there must be a split second where you go, how do I deal with this? This is a young life that was taken in whatever manner. If you're dealing with a 95-year-old that, I don't know, fell over and knocked his head and died that way, it's a life well lived, or for a good length of time. But now you've got a small child on the table that has barely lived, and you have to deal with the emotional stress of that. I suppose the question that I'm trying to ask you is, how do you decompress at the end of the day? Are there facilitators that you, as forensic pathologists, can go to talk this through? Or are you just left to your own devices?
No, there are definitely, sorry, I've got a dog that's going to start barking just now. Sorry for that. There are definitely people that we can go see in terms of counseling. It is available, but I think the other thing is we're all quite vocal, we're all quite verbal. So we tend to have discussions about the things that we see, which helps to decompress, if you want to call it that. And yes, as much as you say when a small child comes in, for me, the other side of the coin is there's a 95-year-old, and now at the end of the day, their life has come to an unnatural death and not a natural death. That to me is also very sad.
Okay.
But in terms of small children, that's something that we see the students, for example, struggle with tremendously. When we have the VIT students over, you know, whenever there's a child, we see every single time that is what gets to them. And I do agree with you. There is something about the innocence of children and the fact that they haven't had a chance yet to even live their lives. And I think that is what touches all of us. And that is definitely something that is more difficult to deal with. But again, you know, because the cases that I see are unnatural deaths. So usually it's as a result of trauma. And or otherwise, sometimes what I also see, and that's got a lot to do with the fact that the Joburg mortuary where I work is situated in Braamfontein, and there are large academic hospitals in the area. So Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital, Sunning Hill, which also has a very large pediatric cardiology unit. So a lot of the kids that I then see are pediatric cardiology patients. So these are little ones that died or that's procedure-related deaths in any case. So these are also, you know, that's trauma of a different kind. It's not somebody that was raped and murdered. But it does touch you, the fact that this is an untouched life that ended up there. I can't say that you can completely detach yourself.
That's where I was about to go. You can't. As a human being, what you're looking at will touch you in some way or another. It's just, I suppose, how you deal with that. Talking about that, and then I'm going to come back to the celebrity case that we alluded to earlier. How does Hestelle, what does she do when she's not in the autopsy room? Do you have hobbies? Do you go for long walks on a beach or something like that, just to enjoy nature before you get thrust back into a world where unnatural things have happened to people?
I'm the most terrible walker there is in life. I am so I'm such a, I'm always on the go and on a rush. I'd much rather be running instead of walking. It frustrates me terribly that I have to walk slowly.
Okay.
I don't think I do anything in my life slowly. So, but yes, when I'm not doing autopsies, I only do sessions at the government mortuary at the moment. So I also do private work for the rest of the day. I have children that I look after. But to decompress, I play tennis once a week, unfortunately only once a week at this stage. And then I love cooking and baking. And actually listening to good music, or going to the cinema, which I don't get time to as much as I would love to. And I was
about to say, when last did I hear somebody say going to the cinema? I think it was in 2019, just before the pandemic. And then cinemas just closed. Now
it's
everybody's
shocking. I think all of our lives. Yeah, true. But it actually takes away from that, the whole event of going out and going somewhere and sitting in the cinema, and it's dark and the lights come down, the lights go down, and
you can't get up and go to the toilet or go make a cup of coffee. You've just got to focus on what's on the screen and eat popcorn, because you can't watch a movie without popcorn. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. But you see, when we do that at home, and I mean, it's become so accessible. If you want to stand up and go make yourself a cup of coffee, you just pause the whatever you're streaming it on. So our lives have become very different, and I think poorer for a lot of things. I think we've really become very lonely people also, because we don't go out.
Pandemic taught us that we can isolate without people going, oh, they don't want to go out, because nobody wanted to go out. Funny you should talk about pausing. I've just come back from 6 weeks in a hotel in a foreign country, and I'd want to get up to go somewhere, and I was looking for the remote to pause the TV, and then I realized I can't pause this TV. It's not mine. It's the hotel's, and it doesn't have a pause facility.
It's amazing. I think our lives have really changed completely. And, if you think about it, it's so easy nowadays to order your food online. You don't even have to step foot outside of your own house. I mean,
No.
you can do anything.
Well, I was just
Look,
saying
I
to my
can't
wife,
work from home.
sorry, you can't
I
work
can't
from
do all my work from home, but a lot of it I can.
I was going to say, you're the only person in your neighborhood with a huge cold storage facility in your backyard. And people are wondering
Yes.
why their saws buzzing in the early hours of the morning or late hours of the night. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Hestelle, let's go back to the celebrity case that you alluded to earlier, and that's Lucky Dube.
That's right.
Take us through that, and what was that like for you? Because most of the other cases, I should imagine, that you've dealt with are anonymous. They're Jane Doe, John Doe, and Junior Doe for that matter, and it's only their families that are involved. But now with Lucky, he was a huge figure. Everybody knew who he was. Everybody knew the what happened around his death. So how did that impact on you and what you had to do? Was there people watching over your shoulder constantly, or were you just left to your own devices?
Interestingly enough, David, for me, everybody that dies, because to their family, their death is a tragedy, whether they are well known or not.
Correct.
It
Yeah.
doesn't matter whether that person was known to anybody else or whether it's the person that was sleeping next to the side of the road. So that's always my approach. And I think if you ever get to be examined by me, because I examine in the college exams where we qualify specialists, and I think this is a good warning to send out. But I think that's the approach of all forensic pathologists. If you ever think that you will be treated differently because you are, or that you need to treat a person differently because they are a celebrity or well-known, you're in for major trouble. As a child, I knew who Lucky Dube was, as much as I didn't grow up in the culture, but I mean, we knew exactly who Lucky Dube was. And that made it more poignant to me. I was a very junior doctor at the time. His postmortem was done in 2007. I had just started forensic pathology, in fact, in 2006. I had basically been there for a year. And I knew beforehand, or I had a good suspicion that I would be doing the postmortem examination. But Professor Janine Vellemer, who was the head of the department at the time, was amazing in that she allowed us to do these high-profile cases, if you want to call them that, and that it wasn't a problem, that she, if she thought you were competent, you were allowed to do them. And she was always available to offer advice, to offer assistance. And I expected that there would be more media involvement, more people present at the time, but they weren't. There was, obviously the media couldn't be present, but the police officers, CRCC, which is local criminal record centers, those are the guys that take the photos and so forth. They were there, the guys that you want present at every single autopsy and who are basically never there, but these guys were there. And they attended the postmortem. I wasn't contacted by the media afterwards. I had no trouble in terms of media trying to get a story, which they sometimes do, or try, I wasn't phoned by anybody, but it was quite an experience seeing this person that I grew up knowing about lying in front of me on the autopsy table. But again, it's similar to what I've just told you about children. You take that step back and you realize, now I need to do what I need to do. I remember I was asked to pose for a picture after I testified in the case. When it went to trial. And at that stage, I was so irritated with the media because they had quoted me wrongly, before. That I said, I'm not posing because don't speak to me. Yeah, so, and in fact, they then quoted me incorrectly in his case, in his murder trial as well. So I was very pleased that I hadn't posed for a picture. But yeah, it touches you. But I mean, subsequently, I've done a lot of people that if I had to give you the names that you would know who I'm talking about. And to me, like I said, it always boils down to the fact that to that family, this is the end of the world. Not just because it's a well-known person, but because it's their person that's died.
So saying or listening to what you've just said about other people that we may know, would there possibly be a second book in the offing with another inverted comma lead celebrity case anchoring the book, so to speak?
Well, it depends on how well this first one does. If people read it and buy it, then there's definitely reason to write a second one.
It's still a question that I ask of all the authors that I talk to is, do you go in to like exclusive books, go to where your book is, and then pick it up and go, oh, look, it's a book by Hestelle van Staden, and it's about forensic pathology. This is so interesting. And then turn to see if anybody notices that the person on the cover of the book, because you're very prominently displayed, and the person holding the book is one and the same.
No, I don't actually, but now you're giving me ideas. What I did do was I went to exclusive books, and to just go back one step, I didn't know whether I was comfortable being on the front of the book, to be quite honest with you. But I thought the picture came out very nicely, and I thought it humanizes the yes. story as well. So I do think it was a good decision made by the publishers. But I did go into exclusive books. We had a launch there 2 weeks ago, and I wanted to reserve spaces. And I went in, and, you know, it's actually a bit embarrassing to tell you this. In any case, I'm such a nerd. I went in and I said to the gentleman behind the counter, I'm coming here to do a launch on Thursday night for that book. Oh, that book there. You see that one there? And he turned around, he said, yes, I can see that's you. And he picked up the book and went like, yeah, it is you. I can see, you know, and the conversation went from there, but I felt like such a nerd doing that. And it was completely, you know, it's spontaneous. It just happened.
The other thing that you might want to consider is, if your book is standing on a shelf this way, is to make space so that you can move it so people can see this. I've done that for friends before, gone through an exclusive book, and everywhere I found their book, I've just moved it from that or from that to this.
I've got a lovely friend that went to 2 bookstores in Pretoria, and she went to them and said to them, can I please ask you to do me a favor? This is my friend who wrote this book, and I'm very proud of her. Would you mind displaying it in the front window? And they were most amazing. They actually did. They moved it to the front window. I know the one store, she sent me a picture. The other one, she went back and checked on them, and I don't know whether they had moved it. But for the one, she sent me a picture and said, look, it's in the front window now.
The book is Blood Has a Voice, and it does. Stories from the Autopsy Table. It's by Dr. Hestelle van Staden, and it's published by Tafelberg. It's available, I want to say, at all good bookstores, but nowadays it's available at all bookstores, good, bad, or indifferent. Is it available online and as an ebook yet?
Yes, to both questions. It is available online and it is available as an ebook.
It's amazing. That's normally the first question. I don't like ebooks. I want to have this. When these arrive from the various publishers on my desk, the first thing I do is just smell the paper. There is something so special about the smell of a new and the feel of a new book, the tactileness of it all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. I'm definitely not an ebook person either. I would sometimes read an ebook if I couldn't get a hold of it as a physical book. Or in this case, where people are sitting in America, in the US, or in Canada and asking me, where can I get a hold of the book? Then it becomes very difficult in terms of our postage. That's so expensive.
Yeah, definitely.
But I have sent a copy to the UK from here. And to a lovely friend that that I actually wanted to give a copy to. So that was a gift wonderful from my side. But the feel of a book, there is just something to it. I completely agree with you. Yeah.
So what's next for you? Back to, I suppose, just back to work, back to the table, back to telling stories of people who have died unnatural deaths and hoping to get justice for them.
Absolutely. We're also starting to probably shoot the 3rd series of Autopsy. So so there's a 3rd series on the way. I don't even know if I'm supposed to say that.
Well, we didn't hear that. So let's talk about the first 2 seasons. We've got a few minutes left. Are they still out there? Can people watch? If so, where do they find it?
So the first series aired on VR last year, and that is now available on Showmax. It also it's in Afrikaans, that's a completely different story. My struggle, although I am Afrikaans, obviously, my struggle to speak Afrikaans professionally. But it is available on Showmax now, but with subtitles in English, which I think is lovely. And the second series, I think, is finishing tonight. I think it's the last episode tonight on VIA. So, and I'm hoping that they will make that available on Showmax as well. Yes.
Okay, great stuff. Hestelle, thank you so much for chatting to me. It's been wonderful talking to you. I want to say that if that day comes and I need to be autopsied, I'm hoping it's going to be you. And then
that's a lovely compliment, as much as I don't want you to die an unnatural death, but thank you very much.
Do I. Once again, the book is called Blood Has a Voice. It's by Hestelle van Staden, Dr. Hestelle van Staden, and it's published by Tafelberg. It is available now. And if at all you are piqued by this, also we've got people now who are writing matric and maybe who are looking for a career path for next year. So this may be a good place to start. Go, have a look, make a choice, and make a difference at the end of the day to people that you may never meet. Hestelle, thank you so very much for chatting to me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I wish you and the book all the very best.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you for having me. It was a lovely conversation. It was nice meeting you too.
Great stuff. Once again, my guest today here on Travel and Things, proudly brought to you by Sun Destinations, was Dr. Hestelle van Staden. The book, Blood Has a Voice, is available and is published by Tafelberg.